not unpleasant, but at the same time they are challenges for speakers, ministers, because it's one story and you have to say it in different words each time. You can't say the same words every time. You have to delve deeper and deeper in your own consciousness and see if there's anything there that you might discover that's a new twist, a new revelation on the old story. So here we are again, and I thought first of all I would start by reading one of the versions of the old story, and then once we get that done, we'll delve within a little deeper and see if we can make it something that we can use practically for ourselves every day. This year I'm going to use the story from Luke, mainly because there's a statement in here, a question actually, rather than a statement, made by the young man who is in the dazzling clothes who is there at the tomb, instead of Jesus as was expected. And here's the way this story goes in Luke. On the first day of the week at early dawn, that would be Sunday for us. For the Jews, that would be Sunday, because of the way they reckon the week. They, the women, came to the tomb, taking the spices that they had prepared. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb, but when they went in, they did not find the body. Now, in Matthew's version of this, he makes sure that there's a reason for the stone being rolled away from the tomb. You know, this is a borrowed tomb. This was a tomb, a newly hewn tomb from the rock in the side of a cliff that belonged to a man named Joseph, who was of a town in the area called Arimatha. So he was Joseph of Arimathea. Okay, so they didn't find it there, and they were perplexed by this. But suddenly, two men in dazzling clothes stood beside them. Well, in some of these accounts it's only one, but in this one it's two. The women were terrified and bowed their faces to the ground. But the men, this is the two men, said to them, "Why do you look for the living among the dead?" That's the statement that's the question that I find so interesting. Why do you look for the living among the dead? Jesus, in this story, if we look closely at it, we realize that the emphasis in the story is that Jesus isn't dead, that there is no death in pure spirit. Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here, but has risen. Remember how he told you while he was still in Galilee that the Son of Man must be handed over to the sinners and be crucified, and on the third day rise again. Then they remembered his words, and returning from the tomb they told all this to the 11 and to all the rest. Now it was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and the other women with them who told this to the apostles. But these words seemed to them an idle tale, and they did not believe them. But Peter got up and ran to the tomb, stooped and looked in, and he saw the linen clothes by themselves, and he went home amazed at what had happened. Then the story changes to another scene in Luke. It changes to two men along a road to Emmaus. They had witnessed all that had happened, and they are going home, and they're really sad. And as they walk along, Jesus appears to them, and that's a different story altogether. Why do we look for the living among the dead? You know, we do this in our everyday lives just as much as ever. Just as much as these people were doing. They went to look for Jesus and his body, and instead they discovered an empty tomb where once he was. The stories have gone on that, well, you know, somebody came and got him and took him away, and that helped create this myth and this story about it. But let's look at this just a minute. Far from me to tell you that what you see on the page is what you are to believe in your own hearts and minds. Because that's not really the purpose of this. You see, looking for the living among the dead leads to a conclusion. That conclusion being that never was Jesus supposed to be looked at as dead. Now, I have looked at this many years, off and on. Every time that we roll around to Easter, I ask myself this question. So let's say something happened and he rose from the dead. Okay, what rose? Was it his resuscitated body? Or was it something else? Was it some kind of new spiritual being that rose from the dead? What emerged from that tomb on that morning? How did that happen? And if it happened in such a miraculous way that it only happened to one person, then what about us? What about the sayings that Jesus said? The things that I do, you will do also. What about that? The one who listens to me and obeys my commands, he will do also, or she will do also, the things that I do. And why was it that women discovered this first? And what did they discover? Every year I listen to this and I ask myself this question. A resuscitated body. A resuscitated body. A body that had been really treated horribly. Whipped and beaten and hung on a cross and starved and all the things that happened to this body. Resuscitated? How would you like to come back and feel that in your life? Or come back and suddenly feel that it's been healed? And there you are in a resuscitated body. What else do we see in culture, especially in this modern culture, that is a resuscitated body that rises up out of the grave and walks? It's kind of like a zombie or something, some resuscitated body. Is that what we expect out of God? To just have one person resuscitate one body? To do what? Amaze a few people? In one particular little part of the world? There had already been a story about a resuscitated body the week before. The raising of Lazarus. Remember last week I was talking about the fact that a lot of the people who came to greet Jesus also were there out of curiosity to meet Lazarus. That was very important to them. So resuscitated body they'd seen. What happened that day, that morning? If it wasn't a resuscitated body, and obviously I think it wasn't because no one recognized him. The men on the road to Emmaus did not recognize him. Mary in the story, he greets her and she turns and thinks he's a gardener and doesn't recognize him. They were seeing something else. They were seeing love in its completeness emerge. The emergence of love in its completeness. All of us, we love our cats and our dogs and we love our children and we love certain things in life. We say, I love that. I care about that. And yet, if the least little thing goes astray, the cat does some business that we're not in a place that we don't particularly like, then suddenly all that love turns into something else. The child in our life doesn't go according to our expectations. Their life isn't going. And suddenly something changes for us in that respect. But what about life itself? When I lived in Hawaii, I saw lava flows. There's one going on now that's been going on since the 80s. It's just continuing to build new earth, build more of the island. It just pours off into the ocean, and the ocean steams up and it cracks up into little pieces, and black sand beaches are formed, and all this is so difficult to deal with because people have built homes in front of it, not knowing that it was going to come. and it only comes in a proximity to their homes and they burst into flames. It's that hot. Here's the odd thing about that, though. As soon as it's cool enough, as soon as that lava that pours down is cool enough that it can harden again, almost immediately life springs forth from it. You'll see a little tiny bits of green popping up where seeds have blown in on it and fallen into a little crevice of it. You see, in all this destruction and all this devastation that comes and all this power and heat, all of this still is this little pocket, this nest, if you will, for life. When we look at the story of Jesus dying, being taken, put in a tomb, it's very much like that. Taken to a place where life is supposed to be over, done with. It's not supposed to happen again. And yet life sprung forward. Why? It sprung forward because it was the purest and the strongest essence, essential love. Love coming forth, producing life. You know, life is just an element or a manifestation of this incredible, unstoppable love. This let there be that started and has continued to be. So it isn't going to end. It didn't end for him, and it doesn't end for any one of us. It appears to, but weren't we taught not to judge by appearances? But to have the right useness or righteousness, right useness of what we hear and think and believe. What we're here to think and believe is that God is love, love is God, the pureness, everything that can come forth, the pureness of everything that can come forth from any aspect of life, be it daily occurrences or what we see as a finality and we call it death. It doesn't end it. Can't stop it. It continues on. Whether it happens in your heart, happens in your mind, or happens before your eyes, makes no difference. Love is the pure, emerging quality. That is what we call the Christ within. You may go through your life thinking this is all there is. The material world is very convincing. But the time will come for each one of us when we will lay down this body and wake up and say, oh, that wasn't at all what I thought it was. It really was just a dream. So, as long as we're here, let us take advantage of the fact that we can hone our senses, our feeling nature, and our thinking nature finer and finer and finer to appreciate life, to appreciate one another, and to appreciate God's love for us. God bless.